right, welcome to Old School with Patrick Rooney, where we talk about natural health, success, and freedom. Today, I'm going to cut right to the chase here. We've got a lot of important things going on. The state of Oregon is under siege and has been for a long time, and we've got to make a change one way or another here. I'm going to bring on my special guest, Kevin Starrett from the Oregon Firearms Federation. Welcome, Kevin. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Great. I'm really glad to have you with me. I wanted to get a guest on about Measure 14 and what's been going on with it. It didn't work out. I talked to a friend of mine who said, "Have you heard of the Oregon Firearms Federation and Kevin Starrett?" And I said, no, because I don't. I'm something of a recent coming to Oregon. I haven't been here that long. I used to live in Oregon many years ago and have been in other places, and then now I've kind of come back, and I really didn't know what you guys were doing. But he said these guys are the ones who actually do stuff. They are serious about stopping the insanity of the Oregon legislature and the Oregon laws. So he told me about you, and I said, well, I got to talk to this guy. So here you are. Kevin, I want to ask you, I want to talk about Measure 114, but first I want to talk about what's been going on lately in relation and how it all relates to Measure 114. So yesterday, I believe it was in the legislature, there was a committee that passed HB 3075 and 3076, as I understand. 3075 being an drastic increase of fees, and 3076 being going after the gun dealers, trying to take the gun dealers out. So can you explain what happened yesterday and what it means to citizens in Oregon?
Yeah, well, 3075 is a lot more than an increase in fees. Basically, Measure 114 was a ballot measure that we don't believe legitimately passed because it was far less than 1% of the vote that passed it.
Right.
It was declared in effect by our crooked Secretary of State, Shamia Fagan, before she was run out of office. She declared it in effect before the votes had been finished being counted. So it still passed by a margin that was way smaller than the admitted vote fraud in the state. So in any event,
and on top of that, we have mail-in balloting, which adds another whole layer there, right? To the
there's mail-in balloting, and I mean, I know that. I mean, my older son, who'd moved out of the house years ago, still gets ballots at our home. In any event, the measure basically created a system that's impossible to comply with. It's a system that you need a permit in order to purchase a gun, but to get the permit, you have to pass classes that don't exist. Then you have to get permission from the sheriff. Then there's, I believe, 3 background checks involved. The permit, if you get it at enormous fees, doesn't even allow you to purchase a gun. It just allows you to attempt to purchase a gun and undergo one more background check. In any event, we sued. There was a suit in federal court and in state court. And recently we lost in federal court almost immediately. That's now been appealed to the Ninth Circuit, where we will lose. And in the state case, we won temporarily. That went to the Oregon Appeals Court, where we lost. That measure will probably now go away because the legislature has introduced 3075, which you just mentioned. 3075 takes all of Measure 114 and implements it as legislation rather than as a ballot measure, but it increases the fees by 250%. So that's what 3075 does. It also includes provisions that say you can't, I'm pretty sure it is on this, because there's so many bills that have been popping up because the Democrats, they smell blood in the water. Mm-hmm. And let's see. Oh, yeah. So it also includes a provision that says we can't challenge it in court unless we challenge it in Marion County, the King's Court, where we will lose. And then if we appeal it, it'll go to the appeals court where we already lost. So that's 3075. It's extremely draconian. It's going to be the only way people will be able to purchase a firearm under this bill is if they are extremely wealthy and have access. It has a provision that requires that you take a class that involves shooting, but the places where you can do that are extremely limited, and they'll only allow instructors who are certified by the police to do it.
It's funny that talking about another issue which we've been dealing with here is the homeless issue, and they have these injunctions down here in Grants Pass where I am, and they talk about an Oregon law that says, well, camping, you can't do anything about the overnight camping, but anything you do has to be considered reasonable. I think I forget the phrase, but it's a very nebulous term. Objectively reasonable, that's the term. And therefore, a couple of judges have ruled, well, that what the Grants Pass is doing to regulate the homeless is not objectionably reasonable. And so it's funny that when the shoe is on the other foot, the Oregon legislature does things to gun owners that are completely not objectionably reasonable, or they're completely objectionably unreasonable. And
Right.
obviously against the Constitution of the U.S., and I'm sure against the Constitution of the state of Oregon. How do they, other than the fact that it's a supermajority for Democrats, how do they get away with that? Is the Oregon Supreme Court also just totally to the left?
Yes, most of the judges in the state are extremely leftist. Virtually, not all, but almost all the judges are appointed by liberal governors, because there's a procedure that we use in Oregon to basically fix things. And by fix, I mean to corrupt things.
Yes.
And the way it works is that judges never complete the term of their service. They always retire a month or two before their term is over. And then their replacement is appointed by the governor rather than elected by the people. Then what happens is when the election comes along, they're the only candidates who are listed in the voters' guide as incumbents. They are listed. It says they are the incumbent judges. No other candidate for any other office has that. And so rarely will anyone run against them because they're in office. The only people who really could run would be lawyers. Lawyers are afraid to run against them because they don't want to wind up in their court and having opposed them at the election. As for how do they get away with it, or how can they do this, the reason they can do it is, and I have made a lot of enemies for saying this, but the reason they can do it is because the Oregon Republicans refuse to stop it. The Oregon Republicans have complete control over this agenda, and they will not do anything about it because they're basically more interested in having a title and a meaningless office than they are in actually protecting the people. Their jobs are more important than yours.
And I totally believe you. I have no reason to disbelieve you. So if they're doing that, how do they? What could they do? What is there a lot of things they could do that would with a good?
Well, there's a couple of things they can do. First of all, they are expediting the Democrats' agenda every day. And the way that they're doing that is the Oregon Constitution requires that before a bill is voted on, it be read in its entirety on the floor of the Senate or House. Every day, a Republican gets up and makes a motion to suspend that rule so they can speed things up. And that's been going on now. So
why are they speeding things up, Kevin?
Because the Republicans are there for one purpose, and that is to serve as doormats for the Democrats. They have completely capitulated. They will not stand up because a couple of years ago, when they threatened to walk out, the House members were offered $2 million and the senators were offered $4 million if they would stay and not walk out. And they accepted.
Serious?
Dead serious.
This is not bribe?
Well, absolutely, straight bribe. And they accepted it and didn't walk out. And the Democrats, okay, we can buy these people off. Now they don't have to buy them off because what they did was, if they had a ballot, more recently, they refused to walk out, which is the tool they have available to them, because they said, if we walk out, there'll be a ballot measure that punishes us for walking out. So they didn't walk out.
Okay, hold
and we
it
got
there.
a ballot measure that punishes them for walking out.
Wait. So is there a ballot measure that's gone in place that would punish them? Is that in place now?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So, but the ballot measure says is that if a legislator has 10 unexcused absences, they're not allowed to run for their office again. When that was on the ballot, the number of arguments in the ballot, in the voter's guide, opposing it was 0. The Republicans did not put in one argument opposing this measure, not a single one.
Wait, Yeah, go ahead.
because they wanted an excuse not to walk out again. Now, they can still walk out. And the fact is that in previous sessions, when they walked out, a number of years ago, under Herman Bartschiger in the Senate, they walked out and completely controlled the agenda. More recently, they walked out under the subsequent Senate Republican leader, Tim Knopp. So Tim Knopp had some of his people walk out. They all were penalized with the 10 unexcused absences, which means they can't run again. Then after they accumulated those absences, he returned and gave the Democrats everything they wanted. So after guaranteeing that his most conservative people couldn't run again, then he came back and capitulated and gave the Democrats everything they wanted.
That is insane.
Total sellout. Now
the
Republicans are saying, well, we can't walk out because if we walk out, they'll change the quorum requirements. Well, I guarantee you they're going to change the quorum requirements anyway. So essentially what they're saying is because we may not be able to use this tactic in the future, we're not going to use it now. But what people have to understand is this is not just an attack on gun owners. This is an attack on farmers and landlords. These are the same people who said, we can castrate your sons and remove your adolescent female children's breasts, and you're not even entitled to know about it. And the Republicans agreed to this. And so we're not dealing with rational people. I mean, we're in a state where Oregonians pay every day for the abortions of illegal aliens. We paid to bring people to Oregon.
Is that still going on?
This is going on right now, every day. Okay. So now what they're saying is that, everything I've heard from every legislator who will talk to me is that there's zero chance of them walking out. But the reality is this. They claim if they walk out, they'll be subject to this rule that says they can't run again.
Right.
But that rule only applies if their absences are not excused. If they walk out and they say, we are not coming back unless you excuse these absences, then the Democrats have have the following choices. They can shut down the legislature and not pass any of the draconian tax increases they want, or they can excuse the absences. But for the Republicans, particularly people like David Brock Smith, whose whole life has been, I want to be a senator, for people like Jeff Helfrich in the House, who quit being the House Republican leader because he couldn't stand the people he worked with, and now he wants to be a senator, they don't care about the well-being of the people. They will send out press releases and emails saying, this is terrible, send us money, but they won't do anything about it.
Okay. Wow. So Christine Drazan, right? She's the one that ran for governor last time and lost. Yeah. She's the head of the Republicans, essentially?
In the House.
In the House. Okay. Who's the head of the Senate?
Dan Bonham.
Dan Bonham. And I have to imagine there are some reasonable, patriotic Oregonian legislators up there, just not enough?
Correct. There's just not enough. I mean, in the Senate, I mean, the people who I would consider really on our side would be Diane Lithicum, Kim Thatcher, Noah Robinson. In the House, Dwayne Yunker. But obviously, no matter what they do, they don't have the numbers they need to affect. I mean, if they walked out, nothing would change.
So you've been, and we haven't, I jumped right into this issue with you. I didn't even ask a lot about you. I just assumed, and rightly so, that you've been around. I know you've been around a long time and you know this stuff backwards and forwards and have seen a whole lot of these wars. Cutting to the chase in a way, what do you think can be done? I think in my mind, if they're going to play around, then we need like a whole group of citizen legislators to get into power and just realize that, hey, you got to go up there and not worry about a career, just go up there and do the right thing. Is that one way to handle this, or is that a realistic way, or is there some other way?
Well, it would be the way to handle it, certainly, but it would require that things happen that are not likely to happen in Oregon. I mean, recently in Montana, the Oregon Republican Party basically just threw out a bunch of Republican legislators because they were voting with the Democrats. In Idaho, which is largely Republican, but a lot of those people vote Democratic. They run as Republicans because that's the only way they can win. In Idaho, when legislators vote with the Democrats, the party goes after them. They censure them. They primary them. In Oregon, you could be Satan. And if you say you're a Republican, that's fine with the party and they'll back you. I mean, that's how we wound up with people like Newt Buehler. That's how we wound up with people like Charlie Conrad, or extreme leftists, or Sherry Helt, extreme leftists who ran as Republicans. And the party was like, okay, they say they're a Republican. And if they say they're a Republican, we can't say anything against them.
This is really crazy.
The party is completely ineffectual. The party does nothing. It's this big amorphous blob that actually does absolutely nothing. And there are exceptions on the county level. In Josephine County, for example, they actually stand up and they when Noah Robinson was running for Senate and he was being viciously attacked by Republicans who got paid enormous amounts of money to attack him and lie about him. Brian Iverson, who's married to Vicky Brees Iverson, who's a House rep, he is a paid political consultant hitman. And he put out hit pieces on Noah Robinson that were disgraceful, absolutely false, disgraceful. This is a Republican operative married to a Republican House rep. They have been responsible for torpedoing the campaigns of good Christian conservatives because those people took donations from my organization. So fundamentally, the party is meaningless. The party is completely neutered because that's how they choose to be. So yes, if we elected patriots instead of Republicans, it would turn around. But the fact is that people don't often get an opportunity to vote for patriots because the caucus, rather than the party, picks the candidates and torpedoes anybody who might stand up to the status quo.
Right. So do we need to... Is it a media war essentially? I mean, there's better media now. There are other media out there. Obviously, there's podcasts, there's X and places like that. I'm thinking. I always believe there's a way to win. There's got to be a way to win. What do you think the way to win? If it's not politically, what is the way to win, Kevin?
Well, I think that in order to have a way to win, there has to be a desire to win. And there isn't a desire to win in amongst Oregon Republicans. I'm not talking about
the elected Republicans, but what about the people of Oregon?
Republicans? There's no desire to win there because there's no need to win there. You take someone like David Brock Smith. Okay, now he gets to vote on budget bills that funnel, say, like $100,000 into a nonprofit that pays him $25,000 to $40,000 a year to do nothing. What does he care about winning? You take a House rep like Greg Smith from Eastern Oregon, who last year made, I think, about $1 million because he arranges all these contracts that pay him because of his position in the legislature, but keeps getting reelected.
Right.
This is endemic. This happens all the time. I'll give you another perfect example. Shelley Bozard Davis, Oregon Republican House rep, sends out a constant stream of fundraising emails, which the House rules prohibit, by the way, to ask people to contribute to this PAC she created for truck drivers, saying, we've got to save the truck drivers because they're going to be completely decimated by these coming Oregon laws. So send me money so we can fight it. Well, she doesn't need any money to fight it. She's in the legislature.
Right.
It's a massive scam. Right. And and the same thing with Helfrich, who was a House rep, who now wants to go to the Senate. Well, the House rules say you cannot raise money while you're in session. But he sends out, it's stopped now, but he's been sending out this endless stream of fundraising so that he's a House rep now, so he could run for the Senate. Well, I don't know how that he even gets away with it, but it's the same thing. It's sign this petition, and the petition always takes you to their WinRed donation
right,
page.
Of course.
And then you get Drazen, who was recently reappointed. She came back, and the person who had the seat that Drazen took was a conservative Republican. When she ran for the seat after having lost the governor's race, she ran on the platform that we have to take our seat back. Well, it was our seat. But she had the lobbyist money, and the guy who had that seat did not have much money, wasn't really a polished candidate. Drazen runs as a conservative Republican, but if you actually look at her record, she votes with the left over and over. I mean, she voted twice to put tampons in the kindergarten boys' bathroom,
You gotta be kidding.
No, and then claimed that she didn't do it. Well, the record is there. She did it. She's a liar. She voted to ban ropes with loops at the end of them because they were racist. She voted to protect
What?
Antifa members. She voted to protect Antifa members who worked for Tina Kotek. Then she made a deal with Kotek when she was the House Speaker that Kotek just broke the deal and made a fool of her. Well, when she came back to the House, she got elected as leader again. I mean, this is a woman who's voted against the police over and over again. And the people in her district who know her despise her. But she had the most money.
What district is she in, Kevin? What area is she in?
Canby, Oregon City.
Okay. So do we
Yeah.
have any, when's the next governor race coming up?
Well, it's 2 years. This is 2025. So I guess.
Do we have anybody who's got a big name recognition and fairly conservative that could run?
Well, I mean, I don't know of anybody who's got a lot of name recognition. I mean, there's a lot of people who could run, I suppose.
Somebody who could win, I suppose you could say.
Well, I don't know. I mean, given the voter fraud and the mail-in votes, I am doubtful. I mean, the last election we had, I think, 15 or 16 candidates, maybe more.
Yeah.
When Drazen won that nomination, she won with a tiny percentage of the votes. She's not a popular person.
Yeah.
I recently did an interview on a radio station, basically blaming the voters for what's going on because they didn't pick her. But she was never a popular person. And she's not honest. She's a fraud. She votes, she protects the left all the time. And she talks conservative, but she doesn't vote that way. And a lot of people just don't know that.
Yeah, a lot of people are like that. They talk a good game. So again, so it sounds like politically we're in some obvious, serious trouble here. Again, I'm going to take it back. Is there another way around this? Is there a media way around? I mean, I'm going to continue, and I'm sure other people will continue doing whatever they can through the media. Is the media the best way to go? Are there other issues here? Are there other ways to go about this?
The alternative media is a possibility, and there's not enough of it locally. There just isn't. The mainstream media in Oregon is 100% controlled by the far left, to the point where sometimes it's comical. The things that they promote it's practically press releases for the left, and of course the cartel media, the mainstream media, is dying. So if you look at things that are getting posted by, say, the Oregonian or Willamette Week, they're not even doing most of their reporting. Now they're just picking up stories from like the Oregonian will run stories that were written by gay and lesbian publications. And then they'll print it as a news story. But they're really press releases for the left. And most of the media is doing that now because it's contracting, obviously, especially the quote newspapers are dying. So they're not really doing any of their own reporting. They're just picking up crap from militant organizations and posting it as though it's a news story. Right. So there's no chance in Oregon of the conventional media being helpful.
Okay, yeah, I figured that.
The alternative media, eventually, hopefully, if enough people are paying attention, at the moment, it doesn't have the power that it needs. And the other thing is that, at some point, much of rural Oregon does not vote, even though it's Republican. And I can only assume it's because they're disgusted and they have no one to vote for. And, in a solidly Republican district, a Republican will win, but they won't necessarily be a conservative. In Todd Nash's district in Eastern Oregon, he's going to win. He's not conservative. Greg Smith is a clown. I mean, but he's the longest serving House rep. But in a swing district where a Republican possibly could win, they don't run people who have strong values, who can energize the base, because for 30 years, the conventional wisdom in Oregon has been the only way we can win there is to act like a Democrat. Well, if you act like if I'm a Democrat, I'm going to vote for the real Democrat. And if I'm a conservative Republican, I've got no reason to vote for you because you're exactly the same as your opponent.
Right. Yeah, we're going to have to clean house with these politicians one way. I mean, we're going to have to get them out and get actual citizens in. Have you ever run for anything, Kevin?
Absolutely not.
And are you interested? Would you like to run?
No. I mean, I will tell you seriously. If you the 30 years that I've sat in hearings, and listen to a just perfect example yesterday, the hearings on those gun bills. They are mind-bendingly stupid. That's just a lot of people who love the sound of their own voice, who just have to talk for no reason. And the time that's wasted in the, I mean, perfect example. Yesterday, the House passed a bill unanimously to make the Persian New Year a holiday in
No,
Oregon.
no.
That in the passed by the Republicans. As a matter of fact, the Republicans sponsored this because you see, the Iranians are a underrepresented minority in Oregon, and they need their own holiday.
Of
Now,
course.
irrespective of what you think of that idea, it was I mean, that cost thousands of dollars of taxpayer money to write that crap and spend the time passing it. This is what they do. No, I would not have the patience to sit among those fools.
I'm sorry to hear that. I understand you completely, and knowing just a fraction of what I know about your history, I can imagine. I can totally understand, and I don't know what to say about that. Getting back to 114, so I understand this. Supposedly, opponents of because of 114 just got put back in play because originally there was an Eastern Oregon judge, right, who said this is unconstitutional, basically, and then
Correct.
they overruled him recently in court. So, is there going to be a challenge to 114 made in some type of court to try to stop implementation before I think the 16th, which is as of this date, it's only a week away here. Is there anything coming or been
Well,
set
the
already?
the attorney who won the case in Harney County and lost the case in the appeals court has said repeatedly, and this is an attorney who's worked for us, we're not controlling that case. We've just contributed to it because it was originally funded by Gun Owners of America, and
Right.
and now we've been contributing to the funding. But we have had, the federal case was ours. The state case, we just jumped in and helped out with that. He
Okay.
has said that he's going to appeal to Supreme Court, and the clock is ticking on that. I think, as you said, I don't know if it's the 16th. The problem is, and I don't really understand. He's still saying he plans to appeal it, but I don't believe he can appeal it because if 3075 passes, 3075 repeals the measure
Well,
and implements the same language, but the beginning of 3075 says 114 is repealed, which means, according to all the other lawyers we've spoken to, is the case is moot. There's nothing to appeal because the measure's gone.
so then you have to appeal whatever new laws they put in.
Well, theoretically, yes. Obviously, that won't happen because it was hilarious yesterday to House Rep Rick Lewis, who is a Republican on the Judiciary Committee, said, "Well, I think this is unconstitutional, and there'll certainly be lawsuits." Well, from who? The gun rights groups have spent millions of dollars in this. The state has spent millions of your dollars. We've already lost on the exact same issues in every court, and not in every court, but in the appeals court, would lose in the Supreme Court. Where are we going to appeal it to? In Marion County, which the law requires? It's absurd. The courts have already said, the Oregon Appeals Court said, magazines, quote, high capacity, standard capacity magazines are absolutely protected, but you can ban them. It was crazy, absolutely crazy stuff. But these are liberal judges appointed by liberal governors. So, and look, in the past, when they passed House Bill, I think it was 2025, that banned homemade firearms. And the House Republicans got up on the Capitol steps with a big fake cardboard check for $25,000 saying, there's going to be a lawsuit. Well, there was no lawsuit, and nobody knows where the money went. Okay. It was just a big fraud.
So is part of this going on that they're playing a little, is part of this a game? In other words, people that might want to appeal Measure 114, they're now making this into House bills, so you can't appeal 114. Is that part of a game? Correct. There too?
Absolutely. Yes. And it's brilliant. When you think about I have no idea because there are other organizations involved, but we're talking millions of dollars that were spent in pursuit of stopping this.
Yeah.
Then they come along and just say, guess what? The measure's gone. We're implementing it all through legislation. There's nothing you can do.
Well, they did this. They did a similar thing with the homeless situation down here. The U.S.
Yeah,
Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, said you can regulate overnight camping. Then they came back and used state laws to get around it, and the Americans with Disabilities Act they threw in for good measure
sure.
to say that you can't regulate it. And they had got a couple local judges to put injunctions in other words, violating what the U.S. Supreme Court already said. They just changed it to a
Listen,
different venue.
sure, sure, but violating what the U.S. Supreme Court said happens every day. The U.S. Supreme Court a number of years ago found in New York State Rifle and Pistol against Bruin that you can't regulate guns by saying that there's a public safety interest. You can't do it. If you're regulating guns, you have to prove that there was some historical precedent for this. In our federal case, the judge said, I am ruling that we can ban these things because of a public safety issue. 100% against what the Supreme Court said.
That's the name of it.
The Ninth Circuit does this all the time. What's crazy is that the Supreme Court allows it. I mean, Bruin was crystal clear and said if the Second Amendment is implicated, the state has the requirement, the state has the obligation to come and prove that these kind of restrictions go back to the 18 or 1700s. When we got into court, the judge, Karen Immergut, said, you have to prove that there were high capacity magazines in the 1700s, which was the exact opposite of what the Supreme Court demanded. The Supreme Court said, you cannot do that. She's done it. They've done it all over the country, and the Supreme Court has done nothing.
So that's a whole another issue. I hadn't even thought about this issue too much, except for through the homeless issue here. Is I'm starting to realize that the Supreme Court doesn't protect its rulings, like you just said. So,
Absolutely.
in other words, what is the value of a Supreme Court ruling if it's unprotected?
Well, I don't know because, this case, Bruin, was a New York State case. And basically it said New York State's pistol license law basically says nobody gets a pistol license.
Yeah.
So the Supreme Court said you can't do that and said that the New York State law was unconstitutional. Within a week, the New York State legislature changed the law and made it far worse. And the Supreme Court just a few days ago refused to hear that case,
right,
where it was challenged. Antonyuk, is the case that said, wait a minute, this new law is worse than the first law. And the Supreme Court said, we're not going to hear it.
That's very disconcerting. So that tells me that the Oregon legislature, as you've already mentioned, is lost. But now you're saying on a federal level, because I thought we might have something in many cases here, homeless and the gun, with the Supreme Court, having a reasonably conservative Supreme Court on the federal level. And you're saying really, which I was kind of getting already, that it doesn't make that much difference. So
no, because the Supreme Court just says, well, wait a minute, there's these technical reasons we don't want to hear this. We're bouncing it all the way back to the lowest court. So that even when there are victories, which there have been many pro-gun victories in courts around the country, there's immediately appeals, and then the whole process starts all over again. So people whose rights are being taken away are being told, look, it takes our case now in federal court is several years old, and the federal court said, we're not even going to hear your case until we've heard all these other cases. Now they've heard other cases and basically found against us in absolute direct violation of what the Supreme Court said, which means that the only recourse is to get it to the Supreme Court. But if it does go there and the Supreme Court rules in our favor, which they don't seem to be interested in doing, and the states and the lower courts ignore them, the Supreme Court doesn't have an army that they can send out. The Supreme Court, they talk, and the lower courts have said this. I mean, people all over the country, liberals, have said, we're going to ignore them. We don't care what they say.
They're going to ignore them no matter what it is. Wow. Well, this is not a hopeful situation here, Kevin. Do you have any bright spots to that people can do or leave us with, or what the average citizen can do? Can we? I mean, calling your legislature seems like almost a waste of time.
Well, Look, the Trump administration is certainly changing things as fast as they can. They've already been sued, I think, over 200 times since he won the election. So
Right.
that stuff will move slowly. The change in leadership at the FBI and the ATF are certainly positive signs, but you have to remember that they have a lot of things that they're trying to address. I mean, you have
Yes.
incredibly corrupt federal law enforcement agencies that have been acting like, the secret police for years. So there's a lot to clean up there. My guess is that Oregon is not high on their list of things to fix because they consider it a liberal lost cause. Vance Day, who was an Oregon Republican, was recently appointed to a high position in the Justice Department. That's a positive sign. He's a good conservative guy who's won cases for our organization in the past, who was attacked viciously by the left when he was a judge and thrown out, lost his job because he refused to bend a knee to the militant homosexuals. But that's a positive sign. I think we have something of a conduit now to the administration, but there are limits to what they can do because everything they try to do will be met with a lawsuit, which just slows things down.
Right.
The Trump administration appears to be winning many of those lawsuits. That's a positive thing. Immediately, the problem in Oregon is a neutered Republican Party and a corrupt Republican caucus. And unfortunately, the fact is a lot of people don't pay attention to that. They vote reflexively. I'm a Republican. I click the Republican thing without paying any attention to the fact that you get a guy like he's gone now, mercifully, but House Rep Charlie Conrad, who voted to castrate little boys without their parents' permission. This was supposedly a Republican legislator. Right? We see the same thing over and over. I mean, Dick Anderson, a senator from the coast, just voted to protect pornography in our schools. There's a Republican legislator who voted to protect pornography and then had staffers sending out emails saying, oh, this just allows local control, which is a complete lie, a total lie. And now you have a bill that was just passed by Senator James Manning, who's from the Eugene area, he's a Democrat, but he's virtually illiterate, cannot complete a sentence, passed a bill to remove the term militia from our laws because he's convinced that there's gangs of white people roaming the country murdering black people. 100% of the testimony on that bill was in opposition, and it passed.
So where was the testimony from people who are gun owners and pro Second Amendment? How come those people weren't showing up?
Well, they are showing up.
Oh.
They're showing up enormously. And if you look at Manning's bill, I don't remember the number right now. I can look it up for you. Manning's bill, all the testimony was uploaded because it's all available online. 100% in opposition. Nobody even could understand what the bill meant. And when he was asked to explain it on the floor, he said stuff that was just lies. I mean, the man is a virtual moron. Okay. I mean, he really cannot complete an English sentence.
I misunderstood. I thought that when you said that the testimony's been all against these bills, and they don't care.
Yeah, and so now you get people like legislators like Drazen and others saying, well, the people have to make their voices heard. The people are making their voices heard, and they're being ignored. And in fact, even Drazen had set up a filter on her email so that emails were being rejected unread from people who are Republicans.
This is so
it's all shifting the blame. It's like, we hired you guys to protect our rights, and you're saying it's our fault because we're not showing up, and they are in vast numbers are showing up. And when they show up, recently, today is Wednesday. Monday, they had these bills scheduled, and guess who didn't show up? The anti-gun people didn't show up, and the bills weren't heard because they knew the bills weren't going to be heard. Move it to the next day. Our guys show up, travel from miles away, and then are told, well, you have 10 seconds to testify or we're out of time.
All right, Kevin, I think we got to leave it there. That's a dark, but I know it's accurate version of what's going on. The one thing I might have as far as maybe a bright light is we have a national consensus that is moving more rationally, I would say more to the right from where it's been. And hopefully if the people wake up one way or another, they're going to find a way to understand what's going on and get these people out of office and make some change. But it sounds like in the meantime, we've got to buckle up. We've got to have a hard road here, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think the people have to address the Republican legislators and say, look, we live in a state that's taking mental health advice from transgender turtles. All right. This is not funny. This is terrifying. And if the Republicans continue to participate in this circus and charade, it's their fault.
And they don't have to participate. That would be the first step, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
We should put the pressure on them if we're going to put pressure on them to not
Well,
show up and help out. Right?
we have been putting the pressure on them, and their response has been to attack me and say, "You got to go to the Democrats." I'm saying the Democrats are psychopaths. All right, the
You,
Democrats want to shut down family farms, eliminate cars, and neuter your children. I don't think those people can be reasoned with.
yeah,
This is your job.
I agree. Kevin Starrett is the director of the Oregon Firearms Federation, also known as OFF. I love the OFF. I mean, it gets right to the point, right? We had a hands-off rally here from the left, but you guys are the original hands off our Second Amendment rights. Oregon Firearms Federation, OregonFirearms.org for more information. And Kevin, I know that you guys do put up, because I just saw one. You just had an update on some of this stuff, so you can go and you get on their alert list too through the email in which I've joined. And I want to do whatever I can, and I want to get this information out to everybody who I can to follow what you guys are doing, because it sounds like you're one of the few rational voices in the whole state of Oregon, Kevin.
It's unfortunate, but yeah, I think that's pretty
Maybe
accurate.
not among the people, but at least among people who have some sway. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So anyway, thanks
Thank
so
you very
much
much.
for what you're doing. And if people want to get in touch with me, they can go to Old School Patrick Rooney. Go to oldschoolus.com and you can get a hold of us there. And we're gonna fight and do all we can. Kevin, it's an honor to have you on. And don't lose hope. There are people out there that are listening. I'm kind of a newer person on board listening to you, but I'll spread the word about what you guys are doing, and we're going to give it our all. That's for sure. We're not going to quit. We're never going to quit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. God bless you, man.
Take care.